Hi, hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today we will discuss about the metaphysical poet George Herbert. George Herbert, 1593-1633. George Herbert is regarded as one of the greatest religious poets in English literature. George Herbert was a metaphysical poet, Anglican priest and orator known for his deeply personal and devotional poetry. His works explore themes of faith, devotion, spiritual struggle, and divine grace with intellectual depth and intricate poetic techniques. George Herbert lived during the reigns of three British rulers or English rulers. First of all, Queen Elizabeth ruled from 1558 to 1603. Then King James I, 1603 to 1625. Then King Charles I, 1625 to 1649. George Herbert was born in 1593 in Montgomery, Wales. He came from an influential and aristocratic family. His mother, Magdalene Herbert, was a patron of poets including John Donne. She had a strong religious influence on Herbert's upbringing. George Herbert attended Westminster School in London. At the age of 16, Herbert entered Trinity College, Cambridge, where he excelled in Latin, Greek, and rhetoric. He earned a Bachelor's of Arts or BA in 1613 and a Master's of Art MA in 1616. Herbert became a Fellow of Trinity College and later served as University Orator from 1620 to 1628, a prestigious post involving public speeches and a correspondence for the university. George Herbert initially sought a career at court under King James I, hoping to become a diplomat or a politician. After King James I's death and personal spiritual reflections, he abandoned politics for the church. He was ordained as an Anglican priest in 1630 and became the rector of Bemerton near Salisbury. George Herbert lived a simple, devout life as a humble parish priest dedicated to his congregation and writing religious poetry. He died of tuberculosis on March 1st, 1633 at the age of 39. George Herbert is classified as a metaphysical poet, a group that includes John Donne and Henry Vaughan. His poetry shares the following traits: intellectual depth, conceits, paradox, symbolism. Intellectual depth. There is a blend of theological reflection and a personal emotion. Conceits. There is extended metaphors, for example, comparing the soul's relationship with God to a pulley or a collar. Then he also uses paradoxes, ideas that challenge logic to express divine mysteries. Then he also uses symbolism, that means everyday objects like wings, collars, doors, etc., used as spiritual metaphors. Now let's have a look at the major works written by George Herbert. The first one, The Temple, 1633, is a posthumous collection of poems exploring faith and devotion. It is structured to reflect the spiritual journey of a believer. The temple is divided into three sections. First one, the church porch. There is moral instructions for Christian life. Second one, the church. There is the core section reflecting on faith, doubt, and a divine grace. Then the third one, there is church militant. There is the final section addressing the future of Christianity. Now let's have a look at the notable poems from the collection The Temple. First of all, the poem The Caller. The Caller is a dramatic monologue about the poet's frustration with the religious discipline, ending in submission to God's call. Next one is Easter Wings. It is a poem that is shaped poem, that means printed in the form of wings, that is symbolizing the rise and fall of the human soul. The next poem is Love Third. That is a meditation on divine grace, where God or love invites a sinner to his table. The next poem is The Pulley. The Pulley is a poem that suggests that God withholds rest from mankind to draw them toward him. The next poem from the collection The Temple is Jordan First and Jordan Second. These poems question artificial poetic styles, emphasizing sincerity in religious poetry. Talking about the themes in Herbert's poetry, we can see Herbert's poetry is deeply theological and personal. The key themes include faith and devotion, the tension between flesh and the spirit, divine love and grace, the power of humility and obedience, the role of poetry in worship. First one, faith and devotion. Herbert's poetry reflects his personal struggles and an ultimate surrender to God. He uses conversational tone and an intimate dialogue with God. Second theme is the tension between the flesh and the spirit. Herbert's poems often depict the conflict between human desires and the divine will. For example, The Caller expresses frustration with the religious discipline, but ends with a submission to God. The next theme is divine love and grace. Many poems depict God's unconditional love and grace towards sinners. For example, in Love Third, he portrays God as a welcoming host despite human unworthiness. The next theme is the power of humility and obedience. Herbert advocates for humility, patience, and submission as path to divine joy. For example, in the poem The Altar, a shaped poem, he shows self-sacrifice as a form of worship. The next common theme we can see in George Herbert's poem is the role of poetry in worship. Herbert believed poetry was a form of prayer and a spiritual meditation. He argued that poetry should praise God in simple, sincere language, as we can see in his poem like Jordan First and Jordan Second. Now let's have a look at George Herbert's religious views and influence. As a priest, George Herbert lived a life of humility and service, rejecting luxury despite his aristocratic background. He cared for the poor and the sick in his parish. George Herbert wrote A Priest to the Temple or The Country Parson, a prose manual for clergymen on leading a holy life. Herbert inspired later poets, including Henry Vaughan, who imitated Herbert's religious introspection. Then T.S. Eliot and W. H. Auden, modern poets influenced by George Herbert's spiritual depth. And many of his poems have been adapted as Christian hymns.